let's get into the growth. You talked about that, because this is where incorporation started to make sense for me, is when I started to look at this and do some of the research. When I look at what cities are doing, well, they have a city code. They have their own zoning. They have their own planning.
Exactly.
And yeah, some of them are going to use that to try to get more growth, because they're nowhere. They're places on the map that you've never heard of. And they're trying to, hey, we need a grocery store. We need a restaurant.
Yeah.
But then there are cities that are using their city code effectively to be able to retain their culture. And that's what really started to sell me, is because I look at Gulf Breeze, and I've got the numbers here from Gulf Breeze in the past 20 years. And you get into Gulf Breeze and you start to see a difference. You start to see how they're bringing some of that revenue home to be able to reinvest in their area, to give their locals what they want. Burying their power lines, widening 98, right? Redoing their downtown with Triumph funds is a recent project that they put to work. And you see that. And a lot of people will say, oh, Gulf Breeze is built out. Well, that's just, the nature of things. It's not. It's not. Spend some time in Gulf Breeze and you'll see all the parks that they have. You'll see, like, all kinds of areas that they protected.
They have a nice park system
Absolutely.
in Gulf Breeze.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have some of those ordinances on, for instance, building heights, then you're going to have developers come in, buy a certain building, tear it down, and build a tall office building.
Because that to me is where the city code comes into play. It says, okay, you want to build here. You want to establish a franchise here. Okay, cool. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to comply with our culture and our way of life. Yes, it could be a Buffalo Wild Wings. It can be a Wendy's. It can be a Starbucks. But you're going to have to submit that to our culture, and you're going to have to be part of this community. When there's no city code, there's just the county code, right? And they can do a lot more with that. That, to me, is where I see the biggest difference in terms of why build here, why build there. It's cheap and it's easy to build in Navarre. Why wouldn't you? Right? Like, there's no barriers at all. Like,
whatever you want to build,
exactly.
Just build it.
But then if you're going to build in Gulf Breeze, if you're going to build in Pensacola, Milton, Jay, all of a sudden now you're going to have to negotiate with the city government, and you're going to have to contribute a lot of times more infrastructure to the area than otherwise.
And that's
so it's
important.
asking them to be a part of the community that you're building in. So you see that growth rate, and it's not just Gulf Breeze, right? We put this together, and you can find these just from the census. You see this dynamic across the Panhandle, right? You can see all these different unincorporated areas around us: Navarre, Holly, Midway, Pace. All of them kind of exploding because it's cheap and easy to build.
Exactly.
And we need houses, right? Like you said it yourself. You found a house that you loved. I did too. We need houses, but we also need those to be built responsibly, and that's what you see more in the incorporated areas. And that gets down to your point of, we've got to grow responsibly, right? That's how you do it. And
we can build subdivisions with still leaving some trees, still leaving the wildlife around, having sidewalks, lights, so that the streets are not dark. The kids can play out a little bit longer with the lights. It's responsible building. That's what we need to do.
And that's where redevelopment comes into play. Is a lot of times a business will come in and say, hey, we want to do this project, or we want to build this or that, in the area. Okay, in order to do that, we're going to need you to correct some of the issues when it was built years ago that are wrong, right? Like, now we need you to build the sidewalks that didn't exist. Now you need the drainage system for the flooding. And you can use some of the plans to be able to go back and correct some of those areas. You can also get public space, right? You can say, okay, we're going to build this, but the city government's going to have a piece of this to build our museum, so that people will know, oh, I'm in Navarre. Right? Or to pay tribute to the history and everything else that we've done. So there's a lot of different options here that each city provides. What you don't see is that coming from the county. And I've had those discussions so many times. And I understand where they're coming from, because it's like they're thinking about the entire county. It's like, oh gosh, all these people from Navarre complaining again. Then they've got the entire county to think about. And guess who's knocking on their door every day? It's the cities who's saying, hey, we've got shovel-ready projects, and we're going to take your money and go do it. All right?
They have more clout.
Exactly. They're there full-time working on it. So it makes a lot of sense to me why this growth rate has been the way it has been.